Welcome back to the Veteran Business Community podcast with Pete Liston. This is episode 2 with Roy Taylor. In the first episode, we did focus on his journey into the military and what it took for him to win the Bronze Star with Valor in combat in Iraq. This episode, we're going to unpack his business journey, and we're really going to talk about a lot of the differences between the support United States veterans get in their entrepreneurship and small business journeys versus what I see as the lack of support that we get in Australia. So I do get on my soapbox a little bit here because I am absolutely passionate about why we should and could do better about supporting our veteran community into enterprise and entrepreneurship. So stay tuned. Episode 2 with Roy Taylor coming up. Welcome back to this next episode, part 2 of talking with Dr. Colonel Chief Roy Taylor from the US Army. If you haven't listened to part 1, it's really important that you go back right now and listen to the episode prior to this, because we talk about Roy's transition into the United States Air Force, into the fire brigade, into his career as a police chief, before finally doing officer cadet school as an Army officer and deploying into Iraq, where he won the Bronze Star with Valor. So go back and listen to that first one, but we're going to crack on with the conversation with Roy in part 2. Roy, we finished the last episode of your time in Iraq. Was Iraq your only deployment?
Only OCONUS, as we say, other than continental United States.
Yep.
Yes, that's the only foreign one, but I've had a lot of deployments, stateside.
Yeah.
And actually, during the first Trump administration, I was deployed to Korea because if you remember, he was all dead set on going over there. And so I was deployed as an MP commander to locate areas that we could use for prisoner of war camps.
When I was, so I am a avid military historian, particularly of Australian military history. And the battalion that I was in my first command, I was called the 3rd Battalion of the Royal Australian Regiment. And they spent many, many years in the Korean campaign with the United States. And I was lucky enough to go over to South Korea last year and visit the site of Kapyong, which is the famous battle spot for the 3rd Battalion Royal Australian Regiment, very close to the North Korean border there. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to go to that peace house on the border where Trump stepped across and shook old mate's hand.
I did. I was able to go.
Yeah, but they've closed it off because there was a US soldier defected the wrong way, and so they're like, "No, we're not doing that again." But Roy, what I want to just before we move into this next part of your business, I just want to go back to the moment of calm, deliberate composure in contact. And I just want to go back to your policing career. Obviously, police do many risky, dangerous things as part of their line of duty. How much of your policing career and your standard role contributed to your ability to be composed and deliberate and to not crack under pressure when it came to that moment on the highway in Iraq?
Well, my commander, when I was there, we have our annual appraisals and performance appraisals. And he, pulled me in for mine, and he said, "You're the bravest officer I have." He said, "It must be because of your police experience." And I said, "Maybe partially," but I said, "Really, my composure comes from, I know if I die, I know where I'm going, and I'm not scared to die." I said, "I'm not go dancing in the landmine field, but I'm not afraid if something kills me." So it allows me to continue, the mission and get it accomplished.
Mate, what is the pinnacle moment here for you to think, well, sorry, I just want to understand the guard a bit more. The guard is not, so when you deploy, it's a full-time commitment for that period of the deployment. However, you do go back to your normal life at the end and you continue to train in a part-time role. Is that correct?
Correct.
So what job do you go back to? What is your civilian job when you get back?
Well, I didn't have one when I got back because I deployed. So I go back to Nortel Networks, and um, they said, well, we've eliminated your position. And I said, what do you mean you've eliminated it? Well, while you were gone, we didn't refill it. We just gave the duties to a safety officer, and now he's going to take over your role. So we've combined them, so you don't have a position any longer. And I
Thanks
said,
for that.
well,
Yeah.
yeah, I said, well,
Appreciate your
according
support
to
after my, 13 months of
risk of
serving
my
the country in
life,
the combat
yeah.
zone.
So I said, well, USARA, with United States Army Reserve Reemployment Act, I think something similar to that. It says that I'm to give you given my job back. And I said, and to refute what you're saying, I've been with this company for 5 years. This guy's been here for one. I've got a master's degree in safety. He's got a bachelor's degree. So if there's going to be a consolidation of jobs, then I should
I'll
be
take that
the
one.
one working it, and this guy should be the one being laid off. And they said, well, no, our decision is that we're going to keep him and let you go. And I said, okay. And then I found out that the law has no teeth in it. There's no
Mm.
punishment. So anyway, we came to a financial settlement, and I decided that I would, again, look into um, being a police chief, and I applied for a couple of places. And like I said, I was very fortunate to be hired as the first chief of police for the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. Prior to 9/11, it was called the Army Mapping Agency. Remember, I've been complaining a lot about Army maps, but
Yeah.
basically, the NGA is its short three-letter designation is National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. They take all the feeds out of all the satellites and turn it into actionable intelligence, and they use it to make maps for the military. They monitor all the seven seas around the world for vessels in distress. We also control all the missiles that protect Washington, D.C. there. So it was a pretty exciting place to work. Still a very tense time with all the terrorist attacks and the planned attacks and the ongoing wars. So it was a very fulfilling and an interesting job. But that's something we didn't talk about that kind of runs congruently with all my story is right after 9/11, I knew that now that we'd had a successful attack on American soil, that people would be afraid and they would want more police protection than would be available. In North Carolina, we have a law that's been around since 1873 that allows a company to have its own police department.
Mhm.
And it also allows a company to be in business to provide law enforcement services. So I formed a private police department named Capital Special Police, and my goal was to provide law enforcement services to people that weren't worry about being attacked by terrorists, such as shopping malls or uh, any place where mass gatherings would be, that they may not be able to get active police to come and sit there, but they could contract with us and we could, provide the services for as long or as little as they wanted to. So that was my first foray into business. And then I ran that business even from Iraq. I had a satellite phone. I could call back home. My wife was a police officer and worked for the company. So between her and I accepted contracts. I fired people. I did everything I needed to do with a sat phone and email from the war zone.
Running
So,
convoys through
modern
Iraq.
technology, yeah, it works. It works. And then when I came back from Iraq, like I said, it was discharged from my duties at Nortel. I went to Washington, D.C., where I had three offices, one in Reston, Virginia, one in Bethesda, Maryland, and one in the Washington Navy Yard. So I had police officers at all those locations. And then I decided I was going to move my affiliation with the National Guard from the North Carolina National Guard to the Virginia Guard. So that way on drill weekend, I didn't have to drive all the way back to
Yeah.
North Carolina. And I was in planning of moving the whole family up to the DC area. But I found out quickly that the cost of living was so high that there was just no way that I could afford to buy a home there. So I just stayed we call them, a remote bachelor or distance
Yeah.
bachelor. Uh, and I would go to work, come home on the weekends. So anyway, I was doing that, still running the business, coming home, working the business on Saturdays and Sundays, driving back to DC. And I did that for a year. And by moving my affiliation to the Virginia Guard, of course, now I'm meeting new people, and I was assigned as the commander for the headquarters unit for the state. So I'm the at the higher headquarters, and the operations officer, Fulber Colonel, she came to me and she said, with your law enforcement background, you would be a great provost marshal. Would you be interested? And I said, yeah, I would. I was able to keep the same money I was making in DC, but get out of DC, and now I'm in Southern Virginia where I can't afford to buy a house. And so I accepted the position full time and worked for the National Guard as provost marshal in anti-terrorism, operation security, physical security. And I did that for 8 years, and then simultaneously still running all of my businesses and buying more businesses along the way.
Can just see this layering of experience, building your own internal personal capability. That when these roles come up, it's just like, yeah, I can do that. I'm fit for that role. Um, Roy, I just want to share an experience of mine that I had. So after I got back from Afghanistan, met a great girl who's now my wife, and she got she worked for an American company called Amgen, a big pharmaceutical company. She got a gig to go to Puerto Rico. So I went as her handbag. We got to Atlanta. She went to Puerto Rico. And I decided to drive from Atlanta to Chicago to meet just down to earth Americans, because I'd worked with so many Americans in Afghanistan. I just wanted to meet real Americans, and why, and trying to understand why the mindset or the culture of your nation. So I drove, my rule was no cities, no freeways. So I drove from Atlanta all the way up to I think it's called the Appalachian Mountains, is it? The beautiful
Hmm.
mountains there. Then I turned left and went all the way across Tennessee. Ended up, there's a big army base, I think at the 101 Airborne or something like
101st
that.
Airborne, yeah, in
Is in
Kentucky.
West Tennessee, up near Kentucky there. Went through a
Hmm.
beautiful country called Land of the Lakes, or Land Between the
Hmm.
Lakes, I think it is.
Yep,
Turned
Minnesota.
right. Yeah, turned right and went all the way across Kentucky. Saw the unique things for me, like, Amish people on the roads on the side. And then I drove all the way up through Indiana and ended up in Chicago. And one of the things that is very different to Australia, and I'd just like to probably reflect on some of the consciousness between the two countries, is just you do have an overt nationalism or sense of pride, and no cities, no freeways. So I was taking like the third road, through some beautiful little towns. One of my real pleasures was every second day I got a cutthroat and a little barber, because it's 30 minutes with a captive audience. I could just sit and
Hmm.
have a chat and just learn about it. It is a striking difference between our two nations, the overt nationalism that you have and the overt, patriotism. We struggle a little bit that with Australia. Like I'm a proud Australian. I have the flag on the wall behind me, which is somewhat unusual for a lot of Australians. And whereas as an Australian, it's relative to our culture, you guys you go a bit too far for us. Now, they're different cultures, different perspectives. I remember being at a basketball game. They're like, everyone's who ever served, stand up, please. And I'm like, well, it's not me. That recognition is really important for your national identity. In Australia, I think we do struggle with it a little bit. One of my points of single issue zealotness is entrepreneurial and business support for our veterans. It basically doesn't exist in Australia. And that's why we started this thing, me and a couple of military mates, to support pathways. Can you just share with us now, uh, was being a veteran and a decorated veteran, did you what was the support like for you to go into enterprise or business? And was there any government support? And were you able to access any of the government procurement schemes?
Well, the Veterans Administration has a wonderful Veterans Business Association. They also have, different people that are assigned to assist you, and they have training courses on, leadership, on finance, on anything you need to know. They can educate you.
Yeah.
And then if you have a veteran-owned business and you get that designation, or like a disabled veteran-owned business like mine, You can also get surplus equipment. So if you have maybe you're a construction company and you need heavy earth moving equipment, and you can go to the federal surplus lot, and if there's bulldozers or cranes or whatever you
Oh
need
gosh.
there, you can buy them at discounted prices, cheaper than they would sell them to anybody else. And then the Small Business Administration, they're basically federally backed loans for businesses. They also have special programs for veterans. When I bought my third business, a private police department in the mountains of North Carolina, I got it on a regular SBA loan, but they wouldn't let me have a loan large enough to buy the business and the building it was in.
Hmm.
And so my loan officer said, "Well, contact me in a year and we'll put another application in for a different loan to purchase the building." So I didn't keep track of it, but it just so happened I called him in 364 days. And he goes, "I told you to call me in a year." And he goes, "You certainly didn't waste any time." And I said, "Oh, really?" I said, "It's just a fluke." And he goes, "But I've got a Christmas present for you." And I said, "Really? What is it?" And he goes, "Well, I can't tell you." And he says, "Let me have a couple more weeks and I'm going to call you back." And he goes, "You're going to be happy." And I said, "Okay." So he did. He called back and he said, and I had saved up $100,000 during this time to put as a down payment on the business, on the building.
On the building. Yep.
And he said, for veteran-owned businesses, they're offering no down payment loans if you are replacing a rented property with a purchased property for your business.
Wow.
And he said, it works for you. So I said, heck yeah. So I took it and financed the building. And now I've got $100,000 in the bank. So I was able to do $100,000 restoration or retrofitting of the business, put in new flooring and painting and, really sprucing it up. So it was really a good perk, and it was only for veterans. So the support is out there. It's not proactive. I mean, you have to go get it. And which all it takes
So
is
you
a
should.
quick internet search, and it'll give you information, phone numbers, whatever you need, and then you need to go out there and take advantage of it. So, for me, being an expert witness, mostly where I derive most of my income from now is testifying in federal court on police procedure cases. There's not going to be a lot of business for me, but there is some. I mean, I'm working a murder case right now for the Navy out of Norfolk, Virginia. So, just being able to get my name out there as a disabled veteran-owned expert witness, may lead to cases all over the world,
Yeah.
for during court martials or other procedures that would require a police expert.
Look, I think, and again, that we're different cultures, and the comparison is not fair because we are different cultures and we live different experiences, but we're very similar in so many ways as well. But I do feel a little bit jealous, to be honest, because because I absolutely am passionate about this space, that going into business as a veteran, as someone who's served, is so there's a couple of reasons. So number one, warfare and service is traumatic for a lot of people, particularly those who experience a lot of combat operations. And so, and the military is so rigid and it's so structured that a lot of people don't want to go into that environment again. They want to do their own thing. They want to have the freedom of their own choices. And without a clear pathway in enterprise and entrepreneurship, I feel in Australia we're significantly lacking a definitive opportunity to really drive the productivity of the nation. We've trained great people. We know they've got character, commitment, and courage. Yet we're not putting them into the pathways that we can be a catalyst into them exponentially growing the possibilities of their own future. Because Roy, how many people, may I ask, have you employed in your business career?
Hundreds.
Hundreds. This is
I have
exactly it. So
100. I have 109 employees today.
you have 109 employees. So for me, like in Australia, we have an excellent. So I'll go back a step. One of my little catchphrases is, in Australia, we do veteran employment really well. Lots of opportunities and support for you to get a job on the other side. One of the other things we do in Australia really well is Indigenous procurement. So for our Indigenous Aboriginal communities, there is mandated 5% government spends, or they get first rights to those contracts. Mm-hmm. And while I'm a big supporter of that, I think it's a fantastic program. to particularly fix some of the legacy issues that we've created as a nation. However, we don't do veteran procurement virtually at all. There is no government veteran procurement policy or program. Uh, we are not counted as part of diversity in supply chain or even social enterprise at this stage. And there are no government programs to support enterprise or entrepreneurship on your transition from the military. So that's what we're doing here in VBC. We're just doing it ourselves. The other thing I really want to share is that self-employment or small business or enterprise is a career at your own pace, at your own place. So if you are someone who's served and you're struggling with the transition, or getting on a train and doing 9 to 5 for a boss in a job with no purpose is not going to suit you, then you do have the ability to create your own future. And this is one of the reasons I love talking to people like you, and I love doing this podcast, is because it's our obligation to be a lighthouse for the veteran community, because you see it, you can be it. And
I agree.
look at you. They could have put you into a job. You could have gone back into government and pushed papers or done something. But here you are creating economy, driving employment, 100 odd employees. I don't know if any of them are veterans or not, but
There are.
mate, so I'm just an advocate zealot on this space that we are not doing enough in Australia to support veteran enterprise. Uh, can you just share a little bit more about the structure of veteran enterprise and entrepreneurship networks in the United States? So I just want to get a bit more jealous here.
Sure. It sounds like you're off on a good start. And the thing is, I mean, everything we have is online, so there's no reason to recreate the wheel for you. I mean,
Yeah.
you can go in there and say, hey, this is a great program. Let's see if we can't make it for the people in Australia. But it sounds like what you really need, once you kind of have a skeleton of what you want to do, is go after your legislatures.
Oh,
Who is going to be able to get this funded, or what, and come in with a plan. Say, we would like X millions of dollars to implement this program, and this is the reward that it's going to
yeah,
be down the road for us here. So again, I don't know, if you have a bicameral house for legislators like we do, or
we do. Yeah.
how it all works there. But there's the U.S. Veterans Affairs model would be an excellent place to start. So that way, you can't get everything at once, but start out small and make incremental steps, and then maybe the program becomes self-funded. With like
Yeah.
the Small Business Administration loans, where the payback is and interest is being used to form other programs for the veterans. And a lot of it's going to be volunteer anyway. I mean, a lot of people that work like in the Disabled American Veterans Association or our American Legion, they all volunteer to help soldiers, because when you're in the American Legion or the Veterans of Foreign War Association here, most of the people are older, they're retired, they're from all walks of life. So the business people or people that have good financial planning skills, can help these veterans, and they do. They volunteer their time, like you're doing, to educate them and help them, avoid some of the pitfalls, and help them get started. But it's like one of my things that I've done fairly recently is I wrote a book, and it's called
Yeah.
Being a One Percenter. Being a One Percenter, available on Amazon. But and I try to tell those life lessons, and the biggest one is resiliency, because as a business owner, that doesn't always turn out peaches and cream. There's
Absolutely. It's hard work.
stumbling blocks and things that are very stressful, and a lot of people just don't have the tenacity to do it. So I recommend, if you're going to launch into a business, and there's certainly a lot of perks to have your own business, a lot of tax advantages and things, but there's also a lot of disadvantages. And a friend of mine told me when I started business, he said, I'll give you the same advice that I got when I started my first business, and that's start saving money in a different separate bank account, because inadvertently, somehow, someday, out of the blue, some type of tax collector is going to come and say, hey, you didn't pay
Absolutely.
this type of tax, and you owe it now. And if you don't pay it now, then there's interest and possible being shut down. And he's right, because until you really know all about all the different payroll taxes and things that you have to pay, it surprises you. I've not seen a comprehensive list yet that lists every single thing that could come back and bite you. So,
Right.
having those plans and having some rainy day slush fund money. I'll tell you a quick story. After I got back from Iraq, and the businesses were building up, and it was December, and my family had bought tickets to go on a cruise, and the plan was to be cruising on Christmas Day, and my wife messed it up, and we actually docked like New Year's Eve at 11:59. So we ended up driving from Cape Canaveral, Florida, all the way back to North Carolina all night long on Christmas. But anyway, that month, we sent out all the invoices to all the customers. Not one customer paid, not
Mm.
one. And, I need payroll money. I've got to have that income so that I can
Cash
pay the
flow's a killer.
employees, and I've got to pay payroll taxes, and nobody paid. Calling them, hey, why aren't you paying? Well, I'm trying to make my last quarter look better, so I'm not paying my vendors. I'm going to push it off till next year. And so I've got to call all my
Killer.
employees and say, I'm sorry, we don't have any money to pay you. And I said, I know it really looks bad that we're going off on this cruise, to the Bahamas for Christmas. But I said, I don't have any money either. I said, the cruise was already paid for. It's all inclusive. So I
It's
said, it's a bad
gut-wrenching as a
optic,
business owner.
but
It's
it
absolutely
taught me,
gut-wrenching.
as the business got bigger, I could always have 3 months worth of payroll in the bank. So that way, if that type of thing happens again, where my big customers don't pay, I've got the ability to continue with payroll, because that's why people work. And
Yeah.
if you don't pay them, they're going to decide, oh, hey, I'm going to go somewhere else. This guy's not reliable.
Well, I remember my first business. Again, we didn't really know what we're doing. We just got out of the army, cracked on, started a business. And I remember my business partner saying to me one day, we just got a bill for $70,000 for payroll tax. And I was just like, what the F is payroll tax? I don't even know what payroll tax is. And
Mhm.
it's just such an important story, with cash flow. And I just want to share a moment I had with the difference in psychology between, again, the two countries and their veterans framework. In a public forum with Australia's Minister for Veteran Affairs, so like the guy in the top job, the elected, official, at a public forum, I asked him, I was like, Minister, do you see a future where the Australian veteran business community can stand alongside the Indigenous community with a government procurement program? And his response to me was like literally almost word for word, do you think veterans deserve special treatment? And I was a little bit taken back by that statement. Do you think veterans deserve special treatment? This is the Minister of Veteran Affairs.
Mhm.
And I said, well, Minister, it would be great to at least get a seat at the table now when it comes to procurement. And then, as a typical politician, he went on a different tangent, said, well, we support veterans through our employment program, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In other recent conversations that I've had with senior veteran affairs officials, great people doing great jobs. But again, I'm a single issue zealot and passionate about this stuff. One of the ladies I was speaking to when I was talking about, hey, if you support veteran enterprise, you are teaching a man how to fish instead of giving him a fish. We will create
Mhm.
jobs for our community. We will employ veterans. Veterans hire veterans. But they're like, no, we want our focus to be on big Australia, like banks and corporates, and we want them to hire veterans. And that's not what they're doing is wrong. Again, this is just my perspective and my opinion here. And the third most confusing thing that I had in a conversation with Veteran Affairs was we have a very good program in Veteran Affairs where people can get cleaning and they can get their lawns mowed and the gutters done and that. If if you've had an injury and you can't do it, they will pay for you to do it. And I was like, hey, why don't we support veteran-owned businesses to do veteran-owned services? Because we will then hire veterans to support the veteran person. And most importantly, for the veteran who is at home getting those services, who is potentially injured or not able to do things, imagine what it's like having another veteran coming to their house and even the social interaction over a coffee that
Mhm.
they might have. And
No.
And the other thing too, and again, I'm on a soapbox here, the veteran dollar goes further. It'll go to the veteran needing the service, to the business owner who will employ a veteran. So the buck is going further down the road. And
Nope. Excellent idea.
yeah, well, no, the response back was, no, we can't prioritize veteran-owned businesses. And I was just like, why? And they're like, well, what about everybody else? They'll all start complaining. And I'm like, so we are limited in our mindset of veteran enterprise. And I've got sort of this consciousness, intent, action, pathway that first of all, we have to recognize and be conscious of the value that a veteran-owned business even offers before we even get to an intent to give them a contract, before we even get to the point where we're delivering contracts so they can go out and create their future and create their jobs. So look, I have, switched the conversation on a bit of a soapbox tangent here, but I'm just a bit jealous, mate, to be honest, of the of the support that you've got over there. And I
That
think the
makes me
support,
happy we've got it. I mean, it's,
yeah,
when you find people, to me, it's always been there, for my entire adult life. I know about the Veterans Administration and programs because, I became a veteran at 17 years old when I joined the Air Force. So I've been, a veteran, now a combat veteran and a
yeah,
disabled veteran, for the last 20 years. So I'm very much aware of all the services that they provide our veterans. And, we have veterans. I mean, we still have a few from World War II that are, still hanging around, but you got, Korea, they're fading pretty quickly as well. But,
yeah.
Vietnam and the Gulf War, all the wars we named off are, they're still there. And, go for my annual physical at the VA hospital every year. I, see it's always packed every day at the hospital is full to capacity and, serving these veterans and, they're meeting their medical needs. And I've gone out to some of the veteran affairs business things to see, if it would benefit me. And it doesn't really do much for the type of work I do, but
Yeah.
I still, I'm aware of the benefits of them and, glad to see people taking advantage of it. And it sounds like our program is pretty, like I said, all encompassing because it'll, give you that education you need to run a business successfully. So you don't really, to come in, apply for a loan, get the loan, and then fail. They're going to make sure that there are courses that you take or have the opportunity to take anyway, so that you've got a good chance of being successful.
And, like I think, we know that small business is tough for anybody starting a business, and the failure rate for business is generally high across the board. But, and this is a massive but, if you have a group of people that are highly trained, highly motivated, problem solving, and they've got those core character traits of, courage, commitment, teamwork, I believe, they are well poised to be a great business owner. Now, it's not for everybody, and not everybody should go into business, but you take those core skills and you have that motivation, incentive to be the master of your own destiny. You are well poised to set up a great future. However, what we should be doing as both government and a community, well, particularly here in Australia, is empowering that success. Sometimes you can add a little bit of secret sauce, as a catalyst to create immense change in people. And so and this is where programs, government support, procurement, networking, and what we're trying to achieve here in the veteran business community is to be not only the catalyst to support that step into business and entrepreneurship, but also to be the safety net, because we are a different community through our service who has different needs. And if we can get that collective support for each other, I honestly believe that we can achieve anything. Roy, what's next in your chapter? Are you still building businesses? You probably, we both got a good shiny dome on top. You might, because you went to college in 82, I'd suggest just 5 or 7 years my senior. What's next for you as you're, moving into this part of your career? More businesses, winding
Uh,
down, cranking up?
I hope to, my goal right now is I'm 63. So I'm looking forward to at 67, I can start drawing Social Security and not have to pay any of it back because of the amount of money I make. So at 67, then I'm going to start making that money, and then I'll decide if I want to stay working as a full-time police chief and an expert witness. Um, I don't know. I'm always motivated, and I get bored if I'm not doing something, and that's one reason I started the podcast. That's one reason I wrote a book. Um, I've thought about going to law school, but I don't know that the return on investment would be worthwhile for me. So I don't know. The important thing about business and wealth building is you got to build something that's tangible and something that you don't have to be involved with that every day, something that's going to make money after you can't. And so I'm open to ideas, and I've got a veterinary hospital in South Carolina that my ex-wife was a veterinarian, and we split up, and I ended up keeping the practice. And hopefully now my practice manager wants to buy it, and maybe by the end of the month it'll sell. So then I'll be looking for something else to dive into to again have some flow of money from another source. So I race Porsches for a hobby, and that's kind of an expensive hobby. So I need to have money to feed them, and enjoy traveling around the U.S. to different racetracks to go out and run them around there at high rates of speed. So I hope to you know slow down a little bit, continue doing the expert witness work. And, I can do that from anywhere as long as I got an internet connection and can do some research and reading. I'm golden. So hopefully I'll be able to wind down a little bit, enjoy the rest of my life. I want to be able to travel, while I'm healthy. I, see some pictures of an old couple in a gondola and they're sleeping on each other's shoulder, and its caption is "Don't wait till you get to this point." So it speaks to me. I want to, do some traveling and enjoy the rest of my life and enjoy the wealth that I've created for myself through these different ventures. And it's all about taking chances and about having the tenacity to do it. And so that's what I would recommend. But for your issue, I mean, do you have a Elon Musk and or somebody else that's a billionaire that you could get on your team to help fund some of this stuff for the
Oh,
government to get it started, so you can show success and say, hey, look, this is what we were able to do. How can we partner together to assist more veterans in becoming successful? Because it's good for everybody. There's
it's
not a
good, mate. You're
down
right.
there's not a downside for anybody. And having the people doing veteran services would be an awesome job.
It's a
People,
no-brainer.
it wouldn't be a high paying job to go out and do that kind of work, but you get a young veteran that's back after an enlistment and hasn't really found his way yet. Maybe he's in school. This would be a perfect job. Go out and spend some time with the older veterans and listen to their stories, and do some good work for them so it makes their life better.
Absolutely. It's a we're here for the long fight. My problem, do I know any billionaires? Mate, I'm just some random farmer who joined the army that's passionate about this space. So
Most
I'm a
farmers are
little bit of
millionaires.
a well, I'm a little bit of a nobody in this space, but we're working on it, mate. We're working on it. And again, consciousness, intent, action will find the way. I do have a funny little fast car story. But you being a fast car man, I was in the Philippines a few years ago, and I've got a company in the Philippines with a few hundred staff over there. And one of the things, I have friends who have friends over there, and I was invited to the Manila Sports Car Club. I was out the bar having a few drinks with this lad, and he's like, "Come out for a drive with me tomorrow." So he sent a couple of him being a businessman over there, and a very strange. He had private police and things like that, but uh, we went to a service station about 40 minutes north of Manila, and there was just Porsches and Ferraris and Lamborghinis and BMWs just lined up everywhere, like Corvettes. There were just sports cars everywhere. And I was just like, wow, this is really cool. And then he came over and he goes, there's a city called Clark where there was a big US air base for many years, Clark Air Base in the Philippines.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And there's a racetrack out there. And the car club was going out to the racetrack. So drive out there, a couple of laps of the track, drive back to Manila, like good day out. And I got a ride up there, and I think it's a Ferrari 458. I think it's a 458 special, and it was yellow. And the guy that drove me up there was a Senator Paulie from North Luzon or something. So I'm well out of my depth in terms of this sort of bird was not hanging with the flock. Anyway, this car was insane, and he drove it so hard, no regard for the law whatsoever, in terms of the way he was driving this car. But the thing that I realized was it's not how fast you go, it's how fast you stop. And he was coming into T intersections flat out. And I'm like, we're going to plow through this at like 150 kilometers an hour. And then the thing would just pull up. Amazing experience. My problem was, though, and it's a bit embarrassing, I was so nervous / scared from the drive. I got out and my shirt was so soaked from sweat and fear that I couldn't go into the function. Then on the other side, I had to get back to Manila, and I ended up getting a lift back with Congressman Manny Lopez from the 1st District in Manila. And he had a Porsche. My apologies for being a Porsche numpty. I don't know what kind it was. So him and his cousin raced their Porsches back to Manila, and I was in Congressman Lopez's Porsche. But we got pulled over by the coppers for speeding. And I was sort of sitting there in the passenger seat going, well, what happens here? Well, I've got a congressman on my right. I've got a young copper on my left. I was feeling a bit awkward. I literally don't know what's happening here in the Philippines, how we go through this situation. To the young copper's credit, he looked at his license, saw who he was, gave him a ticket. So I thought that was really good.
Yeah. No special privileges.
Absolutely. Roy, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's been an absolute pleasure to spend a little bit of time with you. And thanks for giving me 2 for the price of 1 in terms of the podcast here. Again, if you've only listened to this second pod, go back and listen to the first one where we talk about Roy's career as, a young platoon commander with just another gunner and a driver looking after 53 semi-trailers doing these madman convoys across Iraq with no security, no protection, no maps, and how he earned the story of getting the Bronze Star with Valor. Roy, just a pleasure to chat, mate. It is an absolute honor for me to do these podcasts and to not only tell stories of great veteran stories, great military stories, but great stories of business success on the other side, which is what the VBC is all about.
Thank you, Pete. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your service and for what you're doing for our veterans and your veterans. We all, serve together. We have a common enemy, and
yeah,
we'll see when the next one happens. Unfortunately, the world is in such a turmoil right now. We don't know what's going to happen, and I just fear that we got North Korea, Russia, and China, and Iran. I mean, everybody's kind of acting up, rattling sabers a little bit. So.
Yeah.
Might be
Roy,
more veterans.
The history of the US and Australian forces fighting side by side goes way back to World War I in France. Since then, side by side in World War II. We just want to recognize that, yes, Australia fought an amazing campaign across New Guinea, but a lot of people don't forget that there was the US Navy in the Pacific Ocean. There was Guadalcanal, and the movement from the US forces against the Japanese was really what took the pressure off the Australian army being able to push forward across the New Guinea, to stop the Japanese army invading Australia. We stood side by side in Korea, and I've had the pleasure to be both in Korea and in Vietnam, where the Australian army side by side, Gulf War, Afghanistan, Iraq, brethren from the other side of the water.
Absolutely. Yep. I met several Australians while I was over there. So it's always a pleasure to meet everybody, see what kind of equipment they have and what's similar and what's not. So it's always a good experience.
Absolutely. Well, Roy, I'm going to call it a wrap there. I'll just summarize by saying, again, I am a single issue zealot on this, and I don't apologize. I loved hearing about the structure that the United States has in place for veteran enterprise and entrepreneurship, but not only the structure, but the consciousness to support a veteran, a veteran business owner the best way possible, and that's to give them a crack and a chance at winning a job. And again, for me, if you want to focus on veteran employment initiatives, a way we can drive that with leverage, a combat indicator, a combat multiplier, so to speak, is to support veteran enterprise and entrepreneurship, because we will do it. We will provide jobs for our community. We will provide jobs for partners and spouses who need that flexibility. And as something you said, a few minutes ago, Roy, nothing but great things can only come from supporting veteran small businesses. Yeah, mate, thank you for your time. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks for the opportunity, Pete, and I look forward to watching our podcast.
Brilliant. So if you're a serving military member and you're interested in business, you might have a business already. If you're a veteran and you've got a business or you're interested in starting one up, and most importantly, if you're a spouse or partner of either and you've got a passion for talking shop, come check out the Veteran Business Community. It is veteranbc.com. That's veteranbravocharlie.com. Come and hang out. Take care, Roy. You have a great day.
You too, my friend. Enjoy your day, and we'll talk soon, I hope.
Brilliant. My name's Pete Liston. This is the Veteran Business Community Pod. Out.